this class and what this book is about is getting our brains back, right? Because we have had a number played on us since we were little kids, and that is that they put all these things in our classrooms, like the sun and all the planets going around the sun, and they put all these posters and they put all these things around us that basically we imbibed a way of viewing the world that is completely antithetical to the way we would experience the world as human beings living in fitrah. All right? Now, for me, the big shock was when I went to Mauritania, because when we would talk about these things with my teachers, they thought I was stark raving mad to believe that the sun wasn't moving. They just thought it was like that it was just a sign of utter stupidity. And these were people that had mastered the liberal arts. They were people that really, really knew rhetoric and were very adept at reading and thinking, and they were very contemplative people. And so it was really a shock for me to meet pre-modern people in the Saharan desert that just did not believe in the heliocentric theory. They were completely geocentric. And then they had all the hadiths and the Qurans to prove it. So they would pull out Imam Asawi and say, look, it's right there. The earth is in the center, the moon's in the next, and then Venus, and then Mercury, and then the sun's in the fourth heaven. It's right there in the tafsir. So, here's the deal. I am in no way suggesting that those models that we were taught are not accurate in terms of looking at this solar system that we're in. I'm not in any way suggesting that. But I just had a couple quotes that I wanted to read. This one's from Einstein. Einstein, in The Evolution of Physics, on page 212, says, quote, "The struggle, so violent in the early days of science, between the views of Ptolemy and Copernicus would be quite meaningless. Either coordinate system could be used with equal justification. The two sentences, quote, 'the sun is at rest and the earth moves,' or, quote, 'the sun moves and the earth is at rest,' would simply mean two different conventions concerning two different coordinate systems." Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And what Einstein said is what the theory of relativity actually proves, is that they're both equal ways because the motion is relative. And see, when you go to a planetarium and they get up there and they start telling you, oh, we circle, how do they do it? They use a geocentric model because the stars are moving. You're not moving in your seat, right? Okay. Now, the second is from Sir Fred Hoyle, who was famous for the steady-state theory, but he was also considered one of the greatest astronomers of the 20th century, even though steady-state theory was disregarded. Sir Fred Hoyle said in a book called Astronomy and Cosmology, a Modern Course, quote, "We know that the difference between a heliocentric and a geocentric is one of relative motion only, and that such a difference has no physical significance." So, my point, and there are many other quotes that will, look at this same phenomenon. My point is that when Allah speaks in the Quran, He is clearly speaking through a geocentric voice, which does not mean that the other is not true. This is what's really important for you to get. It doesn't mean that the other isn't true. What it means is that in order to really grasp what Copernicus did in astronomy, you have to learn a very abstract higher mathematics, because you cannot understand it. What's been done to you is a model has been put into your head based on that incredibly abstract theoretical model that these scientists worked out. And they have put that as a model into our heads. It absolutely changes nothing in terms of anything practical that we do, say, think, or will ever do, say, or think in our lives, other than it has completely displaced man as the center of the universe. And suddenly we become an insignificant species in some dull corner of a galaxy that is completely insignificant. It's just a minor galaxy amidst billions of other galaxies, which probably have untold numbers of planets, and maybe there's tons of other solar systems in the universe with other people, and you're all arguing about religion and these are just really insignificant, silly things from an insignificant, silly people that are really the end result of a series of random events through this process of natural selection, hit and miss, over billions of years. The Earth's been around for 3 billion years. It's just hit and miss. Some lightning struck a pond, and somehow that cosmic muck eventually evolved into RNA and DNA, and then that RNA and DNA evolved into these unicellular organisms, and they eventually crawled out of the swamp and began to move and change, and then, you know, we were Australopithecus or something, yeah. And then, you know, we're moving up, you know, and then, upright, and then here we are on our iPad playing solitaire. And this is billions of years of evolution has got us to this point where pornography is the number one consumed entertainment form. And we stuff ourselves with food that gives us cancer. And I mean, this is just, what an achievement. This is basically what we're being told. And the other view is saying, go ahead.
I feel like learning all this makes me think that there was some sort of scheme to make us not look up anymore. You know, because we had Einstein saying both of these models can work, which is, you know, not devaluing the geocentric model, which is really all that we have as human beings.
Right.
But then at some point, I guess someone said there's some point like nothing won't.
It's really interesting. I mean, I find it fascinating because, and this is why I love Norman Davidson, because he's saying we need to reassess this whole thing. You know, just think about it in a different way. Because it's like the Matrix. It's you know, you take the pill and suddenly you find out nothing is as it seems. Right? Everything is turned upside down. So, and I really want to emphasize, I am in no way denying these modern achievements. They're stunning. They really are. They're amazing. But they are ways of looking at the world. And those ways of looking at the world have philosophical and spiritual and psychological implications. This is really what I'm getting at. And that's what I want to explore in this class. This is what I want to explore. So, modern astronomy is founded upon the work of Galileo's later, and he doesn't. But it's mostly it's Copernicus, Brahe, and Kepler, and then Galileo does a lot to further it with the telescope. And the name, it's called in Arabic ilm al-miqat, which is the timekeeping. Ilm al-tawqit, yuwaqqitu, to tell time. Ilm al-falak, falak is an orbit. So it's the science of orbits. Ilm al-nujum, which is the science. It's also, it is known as observational naked eye or folk astronomy in the West, as opposed to mathematical astronomy or astrophysics and cosmology. It is also referred to as ilm al-tanjim, which in classical Arabic can refer to astronomy as well as astrology. And the munajjim in Arabic, because you know najjama yunajjimu fahuwa munajjimun, right? So the munajjim is traditionally an astronomer as well as an astrologer. So in the older books, you will see that. And when they denigrate, the fuqaha denigrate tanjim, they're talking about astrology, not astronomy. All right, but it becomes a problem in the books. And then the sources of this science, I mean, the primary source is observation. That's where it all came from. And mathematics, to be fair, mathematics comes from the observation, because all of our mathematics came out of these problems that were being observed in the heavens. لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ السَّنِينَ وَالْحِسَابِ وَقَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ لِتَعْلَمُوا عَدَدَ. That's mentioned in the Quran more than once to show that this is why God did it. He wanted us to learn mathematics. I mean, that lam there is لِلتَعْلِيل. So Allah wanted us to learn mathematics, but also هَلَكَ الْمُتَنَطِّعُونَ. Perish are those who delve too deeply into things. Imam al-Ghazali argues that going too deeply into mathematics is prohibited, because he said there's of no benefit to it. And he says, and it will go too much, it will lead to certain ways of thinking that become dangerous for human beings. Now, I thought of, a title for a book called Weapons of Math Instruction, right? Because all of these weapons of mass destruction came out of higher mathematics. I mean, splitting the atom was the event that enabled Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? So all of these things, and this isn't that Islam is against knowledge or anything, I mean, not on the contrary, but it's, why are you doing this? What's the goal? What's the purpose? Right? Because it becomes obsessive. And a lot of mathematicians have been driven mad, especially the ones that worked with infinity. They actually went mad. George Cantor went stark raving mad. And so observation is the primary, and then mathematics the secondary.